Well, after discussing so much about the players and the roster that's been put together by the front office, how about the head coach? One that many in the city have looked at as one of the better coaches in the association and one that is going to get this team over the top, something that Brett Brown and Rivers could not do in the past. We discussed
Rivers Casino? Where are we talking
Rivers
about?
Casino, but one Glen.
River Phoenix.
Good call. That's a good one right there. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers podcast on a Thursday as we discuss the Sixers head coach and his role of helping to get this team over the top. Again, something that the coaches in the past have been unable to do dating back to 1983. Is Nick Nurse the man to do that? And how much is really on him to get it done to make sure that this team is talked about in conversation towards the end of the year as a championship contender? With Derek Bodner, Kyle Neubeck, I'm Devon Givens. Also, Brianna as well, as usual, and you in the chat. And we can't wait to get this one started in discussing the head coach and what he should or should not factor into this whole thing. So, Derek, looking at where we are with Nick Nurse, something that we've all talked about with him, generally like Nick Nurse coming from the Toronto Raptors, signing up with the Philadelphia 76ers. We talked about him a lot after the season because some of it was out of his control with the injuries. There was nothing he could do about that. He had to mix and match and go in different directions. You can pick at how many minutes he plays Kyle Lowry because of his relationship there. You can look at why not playing the young players like Ricky Council when we called on that. But overall, we didn't lay too much at his feet at the end of the season. That was his fault. There were some that we do know in the chat and Sixers world, Sixers universe, not an organization. We're just talking about fan base. And some even in this building that have said, this is a big year for Nick Nurse. So how big is it for Nick Nurse in year number 2, especially with this roster being put together the way that it has been?
Yeah. Before we get to that, though, I just want to say that your hat game is on point today. I love that Phillies hat. Just wanted to say
so
that.
the maker
Okay.
of this hat, he got together with New Era to make the hat.
If I'm being honest, your hat just distracted me while I was listening to you talk.
He has a store downtown, and he got together with New Era to create the hat and all that stuff. And he actually wanted to talk to us about doing a show in the store. So
Well,
maybe do that.
The little teaser. Potentially.
had
You
no
hear that,
idea.
Vince?
I promise you that was not planned. I was not trying to segue Devon into that. I just really liked his hat, and I had to mention
So shout out Munch, and we'll see what happens going forward.
What was the question again?
How much pressure is on Nick Nurse to get this going? Yeah.
No, I mean, there's a lot of pressure. Not an insane amount, though, because it's not like his job's on the line. You know, he's obviously won the title, so he doesn't have that kind of, like, his reputation isn't at stake. But this is every year that you don't get over that hump, that hurdle just becomes larger and larger and larger. And the weight of that and the weight of not getting through that quicksand.
You're not speaking from experience over there, are you?
The weight of that gets even more and more. So I think there's a lot of pressure because they just need to break through at some point. And this is, I think, the best team that they have equipped in a long time. Certainly, I think the only other real contender is the 2019 team. And that team was together for like 2 months. So I think this is where, there's a lot of pressure on him, not so much because of the pressure directly on him, but because of the pressure on the team and just the way that everyone can be at ease if they do break through and get to the conference finals or hopefully the NBA finals. And I do think they have it's one thing to say they have pressure they have to get through, but they have a team that's built to do that. And, there are some challenges. We will get to a lot of that. But yeah, I think there's a ton of pressure on him, not so much him directly, but to help the team get through where they need to get to.
Yeah. So, I mean, rankings are not the most important thing in the world, right? Coming from the media, we're going to do all our preseason predictions at some point and say, oh, we think this is the best team in the East, best team in the West, so on and so forth. We're all just making stuff up to a degree. But part of the reason we wanted to talk about this was there was a recent, I believe it was CBS, right?
Yes.
CBS Sports had a ranking of head coaches. And they had Nick Nurse second in the league behind Eric Spoelstra, I believe, right?
Yes.
Who I think we've said on this show, many people also agree with that assessment that he's the best coach in the league. So to be recognized as, you're not the best coach in the league, but you're one of that elite top group of guys, that creates an expectation, right? I think I said last year there were a lot of people who expected Nick Nurse to come in and be this like wild, aggressive, just like, oh, they're going to do crazy stuff all the time. And that wasn't really the case, right? We certainly saw it at times.
Especially after Joel went down. I thought they dialed it up.
I think there was more experimenting when Nick felt boxed in to a certain degree. I think what we saw last year was more in line with small changes and small tweaks and adjustments to the system. By the way, while we're talking about hats, my hat matches my shorts today, and Derek didn't say anything to me. But hey, it's just Devon.
Do I look like a fashion-focused individual? No, I just saw a nice hat.
You were like that. Anyway, so I'm just messing around. So I think last year kind of proved that point, that it was less about, hey, Nick Nurse is coming in and making big sweeping changes, than it is Nick Nurse when he feels there's pressure coming from, it could be the matchup, it could be injuries to the rotation, it could just be once you get in a 7-game series, you can't wait to make changes or your season could be over. We know that's a contrast to Doc Rivers, certainly, but there was more of the status quo or just kind of like light, not rocking the boat type of changes that were made. And we saw the results of that in the early season, just with some movement, right? Just with some more athletes on the roster. That's basically same group of guys, but subtracting James Harden, came out of the gate and looked really, really good. And in December, when Joel Embiid is just lighting the world on fire, it wasn't like it was just Joel, right? Like the whole team is firing on all cylinders for him to be scoring an easy 30 to 35 points a game and putting these bad teams away by the end of the third quarter, right? That it's not just one guy, it's the whole machine humming along as well as it can. So I was really happy with Nick Nurse last year. And then to your point, as you open the show, Devon, you write off the end of the season to a certain degree, right? There were some things I took issue with. I wish we could have seen some more Ricky late in the year, just as a, like, hey, throw an athlete out there. But now, and the reason
with
that I
purpose,
think,
it's not just to throw Ricky out there. Just we're talking about the playoffs, certain spots where it called for a lengthy defender with some athleticism and some fouls, of course, that you could pick up with Covington and Melton out and Embiid being banged up. You just needed some of that extra body out there.
Yeah, we're not just. I think there's a difference between.
And I think people know that.
Just play the young guys
right,
and play this specific guy because they need rebounding, they need athleticism. Like that's an important thing to keep track of. But so my focus coming into this season and coming into this specific show as we talk about Nick is, okay, now a lot of those roster holes or problems that you dealt with last year are not there. Now, to me, the biggest challenge in front of Nick Nurse is that the stuff that I think, weirdly enough, Doc Rivers does get credit for is like the CEO type role as the coach, where you have to try to assuage all the big egos in the room. And I don't just mean Joel Embiid, Tyrese, and Paul George, who are going to get their touches. They're going to get as much playing time as they want. It's figuring out, hey, Kyle Lowry and Reggie Jackson are both prideful guys who think they can play, who are competing for minutes. Jared McCain is also coming in, probably going to compete for some of those same minutes. That's just one spot. Then you go out to the wings and you're talking about some of those battles even on the bench with Ricky, with KJ Martin. Can you establish a small bench role as guys like Caleb and Kelly and the more established players, eat up a lot of minutes in the rotation? And so it's a much different challenge than I think they had last year, where they didn't have quite as much quality depth, where you're trying to piece things together. Now I think they're set up to win a lot of games, but can you continue to win and get the best out of the team while keeping the whole locker room harmonious and happy? Like that's a much different challenge than I think they had last year.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's funny you mentioned Doc. First of all, Doc came in at 22nd on this ranking. I don't want to take this ranking as gospel. There's a little bit, it seems like, especially with coaches, there's a lot of prisoner of the moment stuff. For example, Pop is 14th, whereas like when Pop had a good team, Pop would have been 1 or 2 pretty unanimously. But it was interesting that Doc was down there, even though he's the 13th greatest coach in NBA history, according to various things. But yeah, I think certainly, I'm not necessarily sure Doc was that great at the CEO stuff anyway.
He has a reputation
he has
for
a
being
reputation.
good.
That's a good
Whether
way of
he's
saying
actually good is another story.
But I do agree, like there is a lot of players here who specifically come here because of prior relationships, and sort of like the, in the back of that prior relationships is, well, I expect to get minutes. Like I think you saw that a little bit with James Harden, where like the prior relationship he thought was going to be a forebearer of, I'm going to get that next contract. It's also, I'm going to get the minutes that, this guy has played me in the past and that I trust that he'll give me again. There's a bunch of those guys who are, past their prime, and you don't necessarily want to be playing as many minutes as they were. Eric Gordon, he's dropped a little bit over the last couple of years. He's still getting upwards of 28 to 30 minutes per night. Kyle Lowry, you don't want to play nearly as much you had to play him. So you do have to manage that. I do think in terms of on the basketball court, when we've talked about this a lot, but the reliance on short guards, I worry a little bit whether Nick will be able to get the, balancing act of ball handling and shooting and defense on the floor. If there's one aspect of the roster to pick apart, I think that is certainly it. But I think, and also in that CEO sort of vein is convincing Joel Embiid that, look, that back-to-back in the middle of December just doesn't matter. Can you get through to him that, and I know Joel probably believes this, but I think Joel also believes that he stays at his best when he's playing consistently and playing regularly. Can you convince him that, look, you need to take care of your body, whether that means playing 30 minutes instead of 36, or that means taking the back-to-back off. Joel Embiid has more power than anyone in the franchise, with the exception of Josh Harris. Obviously, getting through to him, not just trying to, as a force of will, but getting him to agree with you and to buy into what you're saying, that is probably his biggest challenge.
And I think that's a really important point, right? And I actually want to drill down deeper into, I think the back-to-back stuff, I'm sure Nick will weigh in on things like that, but I think that conversation is at a level above. That's probably at like head of medical, like Joel and Simon and Joel in the front office and things like that. I know everyone's involved in these conversations, right? But I think Nick's more prominent role as it pertains to managing Joel is that in-game conversation. Like, hey, Joel, you're not playing 36 minutes tonight. You're playing 30. And like not letting him dictate how long he's playing and when he's playing as much as I think he probably gets to right now. And some of this is to Nick's credit, right? Where Joel's got a hot hand. It's like, well, you're not going to take him out right now when he scored 15 straight points. And it's trying to thread that needle of, okay, I'm looking out for Joel's long-term best interests while also not pissing him off, while also, trying to win games. It's like you're juggling they're distinct and separate responsibilities, but all need to kind of come together in order to not just win in the regular season, but win in the playoffs.
Yeah. And part of the, taking days off, yes, there is the medical point, and that's the discussion between Joel and the medical staff. But then Nick sort of needs to translate that and be like, not only is it best for you medically and long-term, but there's also like, these are the basketball reasons why it makes sense. These are the basketball reasons why we will survive. And we've talked about that. And I wrote about, why being able to win the Embiid minutes is crucial, not just because obviously you want to pick up wins, but because you want to be able to convince Joel Embiid that you can sit down and things aren't going to completely combust. But I think Nick needs to, you have to be in lockstep with the medical staff to make that argument, because it'll be more compelling for Joel if you are hearing it from both basketball and medical, I think.
Well, I thought that the guys laid out everything through this whole segment perfectly with how they talk about Nurse here, and especially that Embiid part, because, again, just managing everything there, and everybody's all smiles in training camp, and everybody's good to go when things start. But when you start to talk about, hey, we got to cut your minutes down from 35 to 30, is Joel Embiid going to be okay with that? He'll be fine with it if he goes through 3 quarters and does what he did in that month of December, where he doesn't have to play the 4th quarter, and he does get hot and he has those big numbers. He'll be fine with that, but it's more along the lines of, hey, we have a viable backup here with you for Andre Drummond. You'll be okay. You'll be fine. Your numbers will still be there, and we want to preserve you for, hey, we got 5 games and 7 nights here. We want to make sure you're good to go, where you have enough in you.
Wait, well, you just reminded me of no more 18 games and 30 nights. The NBA eliminated it. Like, way to go.
Right.
Round of applause.
Right. So that's Nurse's job to make sure that Joel understands that hey man, you're still a franchise. You're going to be fine. You're going to get yours, and we're going to win games on your shoulders on many of these nights. But let's just make sure we manage this the right way, because once we get to April, we're really going to have to rely on you so much that we want you as healthy as possible, because we have a history of it. We know the resume says this. This is the reason why people go against you when it comes to, all right, he's not the top 5 player in this league because of this reason when putting him up against Giannis and Jokic, is because they can perform in the postseason, get you to a conference final, get to a championship, and then win. You haven't done that yet. So if you care about something like that, that's the thing that's standing in your way. And if we believe that he is all about team, like he says he is, and I think we do believe that, then he is going to have to adhere to some of the things that they throw at him as he gets older, more mature, and knows everything about this game. So it's not because he's not good enough and they want to be selfish and take him off the floor. It's for every reason of trying to win and preserve once they get to April and really make that run at a title. And that's really what it is. He's a good coach, Nick Nurse. We already know that. So now the challenge is getting through to your superstar, your franchise player, and trying to figure out everything else with this crowded room that he's going to have, and figuring out how to play players positionally, what rotations matter, all of that stuff. And that's something that we're going to get into a little bit more on the other side of Nick Nurse. Also, some things, Derek, that maybe you liked from last season that you would like to see carry over, especially if they are lucky enough to have a healthy roster for a good duration of the season and not miss as many as they did with Melton, Covington, and others throughout the campaign. We'll do that when we get back right here on the PHLY Sixers podcast. And if you want to look at some future bets for the Philadelphia 76ers, like we've talked about here on the show over the last couple of days when it came to the championship odds, the MVP odds for Joel Embiid, we referenced Bet365. It's a great spot to go to, Bet365. It's a fantastic place to go to make sure that you get things going there for Bet365. And look, Bet365 has 90 million users worldwide. I am one of them. Raise my hand as part of that.
So am I. Created my account.
There you go. Bet365 live streams, 780,000 events each year. Early payout offers across the NBA, NFL, NHL, and MLB. Now, week 1, Philadelphia taking on Green Bay in Brazil. Hit that one. Got the payout pretty quickly. I was happy. Made some bad picks this past week in week 2 of the professional football season, but I'm going to bounce back starting tonight with this Thursday night game, seeing how New York and New England, how that goes, and seeing if I can get things right. They pioneered live in-game betting. Bet365 has done. Today, Bet365 offers the widest range of games and markets available for live in-game betting across 78 sports. And right now, new customers can bet $200, get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Again, right now, you can get, as a new customer, $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Use code PHLY365 to sign up. You deposit $10 and place a bet for $5 to get $200 in bonus bets. Bonus bets can be used on the spread, totals, player props, futures, as we mentioned, for basketball, and much more. So make sure you go ahead and do that if you're looking for football in general. Again, for tonight, well, they do have tonight, Never Ordinary, Bet365's Thursday night touchdown options that they give you. See for yourself with the Thursday night touchdown offer. Place qualifying parlay bets totaling $20 or more on tonight's game and get bonus bets for every touchdown. T&Cs do apply. Download the app, use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's Never Ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 plus and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, or you can call or text 1-800-GAMBLER and make sure that you do that before things get a little out of control. All right? Also want to tell you about some things. While Derek and I have our hats on right now, we're not going to take our hats off right now. We're just not. We're not taking our hats off because there's no need for us to do that right now.
I wear these hats because PHLY makes some great hats, but there's other reasons I like hats as well.
Glatt hair restoration. If you or someone in your family is looking for it, again, I wish you could help me with my beard, and my beard will grow in a little bit more. I reference Kyle a little bit earlier in the week. Now I'm referencing and Derek. They had the full beard. I'm a little jealous. I don't have the full beard. I wish Glatt could help me out with that. But, all right. If not, hey, if you want to make sure that you're good and your hair is all great, you want to make sure you look great when you go out and your significant other wants you to, is it time to cut it? No, I can save it by going to, again, Glatt Hair Restoration, Morgenstern Center for Orbital and Facial Plastic Surgery. Recently welcomed the Glatt Group to practice, creating an invaluable opportunity to leverage Dr. Glatt's high-caliber brand equity and begin an exciting chapter in Dr. Morgenstern's highly respected legacy. Dr. Morgenstern is a nationally recognized specialist and among the few surgeons in the country who is trained in plastic surgery, facial, cosmetic surgery, general trauma surgery, and so much more. As a true advocate, we are also excited to have my good buddy John Marks spearheading the campaign and marketing the campaign on this new platform, educating his audience through the authentic stories and engaging narrative. And John has been talking about Dr. Glatt for many, many years as a partner, and it's great to have him here with us at PHLY, and established by the late Dr. Paul Glatt, now part of the Morgenstern Center. Dr. Glatt in the hair restoration is under the direction of the renowned plastic surgeon of Dr. Ken Morgenstern. And Glatt and Morgenstern shared a remarkable bond that spanned many years as colleagues and friends, for collaborating on critical research studies to working together in the operating room. And under the direction of Dr. Morgenstern, a highly respected plastic surgeon, each member of this exceptionally trained team brings 30 plus years of industry experience. Hair restoration is all they do. So what do you get with hair restoration? Well, you go with the laser light therapy, non-invasive TED treatments. How about vitamin supplementation, topical oral medications, PRP and stem cell restoration, hair restoration surgery, and each patient receives a complimentary one-on-one consultation to pinpoint the best course of treatment. So if you are interested, bald is now optional. But if you want to improve your look and how you feel about yourself, Dr. Glatt has the right treatment for you. Regain your confidence. Visit GlattHairMCTR.com or call 610-980-4000 to get started. All right, welcome back. Yes, welcome back, PHLY Sixers podcast. Derek, Kyle, Devon, Brianna, all of you. Derek, if you looked at some of the things that you did like from Nick Nurse the season ago, even having to navigate through all the injuries and maybe some concerns there as well, what are some things that stood out to you that you would like to see continue to translate to this particular group or even get a little bit better?
Yeah, well, Kyle sort of mentioned it. I did like that they got a little bit more aggressive after Embiid went down, not just because I thought they had to, because their offense was so bad they had to find a way to generate, more transition opportunities. And if you go back in the post, I get yelled at every time I bring up. I have to. In the post Ben Simmons era, the Sixers were mid-pack.
Oh, Winona!
Look,
wave your finger
at
Derek.
Only
you
one
said
way
I don't
I
want to
can
hear that
explain
name.
That. I'm getting to a good point. I promise. In the post Ben Simmons era, the Sixers were like mid-pack in terms of forcing turnovers, like 14th and 17th in 2 consecutive years, something like that. They were, I believe, 4th last year, and a lot of that came after Embiid went down. I think they were 1st in the league in terms of forcing turnovers after Embiid went down with that injury.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that because they needed to in order to try to stay competitive, but because I think that translates pretty well this year when you add in Caleb Martin, when you add in Paul George, when maybe Ricky Council gets a little bit more playing time. I think they have some of the athletes, not necessarily that they had in Toronto, but certainly more than they had last year and more than they had 2 years ago. And that's where I'm excited to see what Nick Nurse can do, because I do think you're going to spend a lot of time in a drop. And in order to do that successfully, especially with Drummond, who's just not nearly as good of a rim protector and quite frankly just can't come up to the level of the screen like Joel Embiid can, one way to mitigate that weakness is to have your wings really help onto drivers and be able to recover back. And I think they just have way more tools in their arsenal to be a little bit more, you're not going to have scheme diversity in terms of being able to switch with your 5, but you might be able to show a ball handler a crowd and not get punished for it. But the one big question mark I have is in the backcourt, which is why we've spent so much time focusing on can you get enough, ball handling and shot creation and passing and shooting without having to rely on people shorter than Kyle Neubeck.
I'm so glad you brought that up, as we always somehow do on this show, Derek.
Pass the test, man.
You can't let a good bit die.
So one of the things I'm fascinated in, or I'm keeping an eye on certainly, is the rebounding and the size of this team, as you're alluding to. But beyond that, it's okay. If our thesis that we've talked about a lot, right, which is that they have more wings, they have more athleticism, they can guard the yard, so to speak, and guard their individual guy on a lot more consistent of a basis than last season. And Joel Embiid is back at the rim. He can play more, maybe not more drop, but be near the rim in their coverage for more rebounding opportunities and whatnot. And they still have rebounding problems. The question is, what exactly do you do before making a personnel move, right? Because if they struggle rebounding out of the gate first month and a half, you're still not realistically making a trade for another, at minimum, another month, more than likely another couple months until you're, all right, we feel like this is actually a problem. We've reached about halfway through the season, and rebound, if it's rebounding, if it's playmaking, whatever it is, but we're sticking with rebounding now. How do you manufacture rebounding with either your personnel groupings or how you're set up, right? Like a lot of this team just rests on Joel. You got to be a better rebounder this season than you were maybe last year, even than what we saw in the Olympics, right? Mm-hmm. Where he's surrounded by plenty of other guys who can help. LeBron's still a good rebounder at his age. Steph Curry maybe less so, but you have a lot of switchable athletic wings on the team. Even like a Drew Holiday is a big guard who can help out there, not even necessarily grabbing them himself, but boxing guys out, keeping the lane clear. And Joel at the end of those games was still having some issues with, whether it was focus, positioning, conditioning, whatever it might be. So Nick Nurse, how does he respond to that challenge? Is it just as simple as Yabusele's got to play more minutes because he's a big body? I don't think he's like a great individual defensive rebounder on his own. I think he's more of he'll crash the offensive glass. I think he can be a weapon there. But, how do you do this where so much of your personnel is backcourt based, right? And frankly, a lot of those backcourt guys, as Derek alluded to earlier, are guys that want and expect to play. Like Reggie Jackson didn't come to play with his friend Paul George and then sit on the bench and wave a towel, right? Kyle Lowry, the relationship we've talked about many times with Nick Nurse, he didn't come back so that he could just, rot at the end of the bench and hang out in his hometown, right? He's expecting to have maybe not a huge role, but a sizable enough role that we're going to notice him night to night. And so if these guys factor into your rotation, I'm not sure exactly how you get there. And add on top of this, if you play zone more often, which we saw a pretty good amount of zone last year, you're always susceptible to offensive rebounds, or more susceptible to offensive rebounds playing out of a zone than playing in a typical man defense. And so we talked a lot about the personnel-based concerns on the rebounding front. What can Nick Nurse do to help that problem? I'm not exactly sure what that is, right? Like I tend to believe a lot of that is personnel.
Absolutely.
There's not, beyond playing less zone, which they're not going to be like the Miami Heat. So you want them in that kind of middle ground where they played enough that it works, but they don't rely on it entirely. Yeah. They can't really cut more from their zone program right now.
Playing less zone, unless you're the Miami Heat, means playing 5% of your possessions in zone instead of 8%. It's not going to materially change the rebounding.
Yeah, and for me with the rebounding, and we've talked about this a number of times of how they need to correct this, Joel Embiid included, of making sure that this happens. We always talk about that's a want to. That's you go out there and give the effort and do that. That's not on Nick Nurse. I mean, it's really
that's why
not.
We like Ricky, right?
Yeah.
He comes in, goes up, grabs the ball with two hands. He's hitting guys, boxing guys out. Like that's a big reason that we were advocating for him all last season.
Yep. And the Andre Drummond piece, he's just not going to play enough for it to be a big factor in 30 plus minutes of the game. Now, when he's out there and he's in for Joel Embiid, he's going to do his job. He's going to both defensive rebound and he's going to give you extra possessions on the offensive end to do that. But that's one player. And that's where the question comes in of who else is just going to go out there. I'm sure in practice, because when we talk about training camp and we're about to be there and get ready for training camp, and we see these videos that the Sixers are putting out on their social account, they look like they're going after it when they are playing. I'd imagine right now, Derek, that they're probably in these scrimmages that they are putting together because they can't go through much with the head coach and stuff. That the assistant coaches or player development guys can be there. They're rebounding the ball. They're crashing the glass. That doesn't have to escape them in game 25 and now get out rebounded by the Charlotte Hornets on a Tuesday night. That's them wanting to do that. And when it doesn't happen and these offensive rebounds continually pile up for the other team, the only thing Nick Nurse can do is, I'm pulling you out because you're not rebounding. And can I find somebody else like Ricky, like KJ Martin, who's going to go in there trying to earn more minutes and crash the glass, dive on the floor, get those 50-50 balls to give you that possession on the offensive end, or maybe even the same when there's one that's up for grabs on the offensive end and get that offensive rebound. That part is not a Nurse part, except for when you see, oh, it's a floorboard and somebody just watching it, watching the basketball bounce directly in front of them. And then Josh Hart comes and sneaks it because he wants it more. And you cannot have that.
You mentioned this. I looked it up because I recently wrote an article on it. AllPHLY.com. What a website.
Pretty good.
But the defensive rebounding rate with Joel Embiid on the bench in the playoffs, 61%. That means that the Knicks got almost 40% of their missed shots when Joel Embiid wasn't on the bench. So I agree that Andre Drummond's not going to fix the problem, but it will be nice to just have somebody there to
Absolutely.
help.
And you brought up if there's an issue, hey, you're coming to the bench type of thing. As much as the start of the show was about, hey, they have a lot of guys, you got to keep everybody happy. That is the power of having a roster where we think 14 guys can play. Now, 14 guys, not all of them are going to be able to be brought in to be like, you're a rebounder, right? Yeah. Like if Caleb Martin has a possession where he just ignores a floorboard, there are only so many guys on that bench realistically who you're bringing in. Like, you do similar things to Caleb Martin. Like, you're not bringing in Reggie Jackson or Kyle Lowry or Jared McCain because of an issue like that. But if you're another one of those like for like type guys at those positions, there are just more of them, right? Like, they are 2 deep at basically every position, 3 deep even at some of these. And so that is going to help Nick Nurse be in a position where it is a true meritocracy. There are not a lot of young guys either, which a lot of fans always want to see the young guys, but coaches tend to ignore them. Well, now Nick Nurse says, all right, I have a lot of vets, a lot of guys with experience. So if I'm pulling a vet, I'm not having to rely on, hey, this is a guy who's never played NBA minutes, who's never been, in a tight playoff game. Like, there are few of those guys. So I think in his mind, he probably goes into the season really happy with, I just have a lot of guys to choose from and pull from. I think he would be really excited about that, despite the challenges you might have to deal with, the egos, the personalities, the playing time desires that all these guys have. There is another side of that, and I think that will end up working out great for him on a lot of fronts.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one to see how he navigates through all of that. We have so much more to talk about here. We have a super chat from Ernest that we have to get to on the other side. Ernest Peterson with the super chat on the rebounding issues. We'll talk about that and more when we get back here on the PHLY Sixers podcast.
First up, we want to tell you about Game Time. Obviously, you've got football season now going. You've got the baseball playoffs coming up and your Sixers not too far away. You're going to want tickets, and Game Time is the place to go.
Larry David going to be in town.
Yeah. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks features out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Here are some of the other great features that make Game Time easy to use. All-in pricing. When you toggle this feature, it shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. You get a panoramic view of your seat from the app before you buy, so there are no surprises when you get to the stadium. I've been burned by that many of times in the past. This is a great feature. They have a lowest price guarantee, so if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And with Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. And of course, as a reminder, the Game Time Picks, which shows you only the best deals, so it makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time.
Ooh, we like that. And what time is it? Game time? All right.
Cliff Livingston. Yeah, from the Bulls.
Well, guys, once you get a seat, thanks to Game Time, you're headed to the game. There are a lot of stressful things that could happen on the way to a game, when you're at a game, when you're leaving one. But there's always a better way. There is a chiller way. Once you choose chill, I also want you to go out there and reach for an ice cold Coors Light. With Coors Light, you know you're getting an ice cold beer. And the mountains turn blue on the bottles and cans as they hit that perfect temperature. You got the regular listeners of the show know that I've had some stressful times recently with the family stuff, the busyness of summer, working on my house. There's just, there's a lot of things going on that you can just lose sight of. You feel like you're trapped in a tornado. Sometimes the bad things keep happening. They're not going to stop, but it's within you to take that step back, move to the side and say, tomorrow is going to be a better day. I'm going to have a better time. I'm going to choose chill, even if I have to see Derek's face at work every single day. And then after I choose chill, Derek's making all kinds of faces over there now. I can get a cold layered, cold filtered, cold packaged Coors Light with a smooth finish and get that mountain cold refreshment to wash all the pain, the suffering. No, I'm just kidding. Just to enjoy a nice ice cold beer. When you choose to rise above it all, choose chill, choose Coors Light, get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/PHLY basketball. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. And just to be clear, we always say this.
Incredible stray.
I was going to say, we always poke fun at one another. I have no issue seeing Derek's face at work every day. We have a good time here. We get to talk about basketball, hang out with you guys. And Bree has to put up with it all.
If you have a problem with me, you're about 10 days away from your hell. So,
I mean, if anyone has a problem, it's Bree listening to Papa
Yes.
Shot go for. She's like working after the show, cutting clips and editing,
clank,
just
clank.
like pop, pop, pop over and over again.
And it's not like there's a break in the action, too, because once one person's done, the next person's right up and ready to go.
Bree has to choose
That's
chill
very
quite
true.
often, I think.
Very true. You don't want to see Larry David, man, coming in town? Hey, Larry David. The prices is kind of high, though. But, hey, that's why you go to Game Time.
Game Time will save you some money. Saved us some money at the Sphere in Vegas.
Yes, they did.
Yep.
We also have to check the other one. We're not going to say that one on the air. All right, let's get to the super chat here from our good friend Ernest Peterson, talking about the rebounding issue. Joe struggled, but also consistently last year, the entire team, including Maxey, would shot watch and not box their guy out, especially on those blockout attempts.
So I think
Thank you, Ern.
Thank you, Ernest. There are a few things going on here. One, I think you have to try to straddle the line between getting out in transition and running and attacking against defenses that aren't set, which is, that's a really important thing, especially for someone like Tyrese Maxey, right? Like he's the guy you want to be the outlet, right? Like
Absolutely.
Joel or Paul or Kelly, one of these guys goes up, gets a rebound. Tyrese is somewhere not necessarily at midcourt, but moving up the floor, looking back for the ball to either attack himself, make a head pass in transition. So that's part of it. But I do think if we're saying, hey, what can Nick Nurse do from day one of training camp, it's probably like he did with some of their movement and spacing last year's training camp. It's emphasizing the things they need to do as rebounders, right? Like the team rebounding, the group rebounding. And I'm not expecting them to come out this season and be the Knicks, right? Where you have someone like Josh Hart that's his signature skill as a role player is rebounding. And they have a lot of big bodies. They have big wings. They have OG. They have Mikal, Julius Randle, like a traditional power forward who can rebound. You're not expecting them to be a team like that. But you do have to be prepared to play teams like that and come into the season like, okay, when we're up against a team whose whole strategy, whose whole identity is punching you in the mouth, how do you counterpunch? How do you respond to that? And I think with how they set up where however they emphasize box outs and,
whatever it is.
The way, yeah.
Whatever that drill
so like
is.
when Brett Brown was the head coach for offensive rebounding, the way they did it is they specifically had guys who they were called, you're a go guy. you can chase offensive rebounds basically whenever you feel like you have a lane to it. If you are not one of those guys, get your butt back to the other end of the floor. And so you could apply that same principle to the defensive end, right? Like maybe Tyrese Maxey, he's the go guy. Everybody else, you better hit somebody on their way to the rim. And I don't want to see a single floorboard, right? I want to see, obviously there'll be some weird bounces, things happen. But by and large, every single missed shot has to be approached with a level of focus and intensity that I agree with Ernest, we didn't see all the time last season. And it's something that has to be, it certainly has to come from Joel because it starts with your best player. And I think it always trickles down, but it's got to be the whole team has to buy in here.
Danny Carino says in the chat, we can't be a good rebounding team without being a more physical team. Let's hope the new additions make us more physical on that end when it comes to the rebounding. And the one thing that a lot of people discussed in the offseason before this maybe untraditional kind of 5-man unit that they're going to have as a starting, at least for right now, the starting 5, is that they don't have a big-time 4, a big 4-man with the physicality like we see with some guys in the past where it was Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, Rasheed Wallace, Kevin Garnett, these names that Tim Duncan, Chris Webber, traditional power forwards that are going to take care of that type of responsibility. And right now you have 3 wings that we like as a group and as a unit, but are they going to do exactly what Kyle and Derek are talking about by going out there and collectively crashing that glass? The same thing that Ernest is talking about, because that's going to be a big point of emphasis where you didn't get that big power forward in the offseason. You got Yabusele may not play enough. He may not play at all to answer.
Yeah, we have no idea. Like I think a lot of people started penciling him in because he looks like their idea of like, this is what they need.
Yep.
But we don't even know if he's going to play, right?
No.
Like I think he hopes so. I think a lot of people are like, he fills a need, therefore he will play. But that's not necessarily what Nick Nurse is going to do. Training camp and preseason will be very telling.
I also don't want to give him an out because they're starting 3 wings, because it's not like there are that many teams starting traditional power forwards.
I agree.
Teams aren't starting, Chris Webber at power forward anymore. And specifically, the team that whooped their butts on the glass was not starting a traditional power forward.
Their traditional power forward was in street clothes.
But the guy that was really killing them was a 6'5" shooting guard.
Yes.
And also their center pursues offensive rebounds more. Their backup center before he got hurt pursued offensive rebounds more. It is a collective team effort. I think the way to solve it is not necessarily to go out and get a traditional power forward, because that comes with it a lot of downsides as well. But you've just there's only so much Nick Nurse can do. I do think this is a personnel issue, not so much in they need taller players, but they need players who just pursue rebounds more aggressively and more consistently. I think it's more of a makeup and a player style thing and a scouting thing and whatnot than it is something you can very easily, you're not going to make someone a great rebounder by hammering it in drills too much. You make them great rebounders by going out and getting guys who are just naturally aggressive rebounders.
Do you see anybody in that starting 5 outside of Embiid that could do that? Could Caleb Martin be that?
Kelly loves fighting people for rebounds.
Yes.
That's after they have it. And
No,
trying to
actually,
take it from them.
I didn't say this earlier, but since I just was having a joke at Kelly's expense, I want to, Phil W., wherever you are, timestamp this. I think Kelly Oubre is going to be a really important conduit this year after the season he had and having to absorb all these minimum or low salary role players, where Kelly came out of last season, comes in as a minimum guy. I wouldn't necessarily say it's his last NBA chance, right? But once you're a minimum guy after being a big money guy, it's you're running out of opportunities.
Yeah.
So he comes in as that type of player, buys into what Nick Nurse is selling, and has a great individual year, one of his best, team-centric years ever, if not the best, and gets his new contract. And after the season, as we're talking to him, it's Nick is a really smart guy. I love playing for him, all that. And I think his story and his voice is important for those guys who are coming here to be look, maybe you won't have the same opportunity I had right away, where he got thrust into the starting lineup. And that was, not exactly the expectation, I think, when they signed him. But if you just take your opportunity and do what this coach and this coaching staff asks, there's a lot in front of you. Like, you can carve out a really nice role for yourself here. You can make yourself some money in the future. And as much as Nick will impress those things upon these guys as they come in and they're in camp and whatnot, it always does mean a little bit more if it can come from another one of your teammates. And they can actually show you, like, look, I changed how I played. My approach was different, and I bought in to what this coach said, and it paid off for me immediately.
Yep.
Like, I immediately got a bigger opportunity. I immediately got a bump in my pay for the next season. And so Kelly being able to tell that story in the locker room, I think, should help Nick and the rest of the coaching staff as they do try to figure these things out and jostle the lineups this year.
Yeah, he is one that they're going to count on. Remember, you're the fourth and fifth option on the offensive end, so your role is totally different. Go ahead and get those rebounds both defensively and offensively. And that's how you're going to stay on the floor. Outside of the shot making part, that's exactly what it is. It's just that effort and going out there and getting it. And once again, that's not on Nick Nurse. That's on the players to go out there and do it. Now, we'll see when things go haywire and he has to make those substitutions and you call on some of the others. Kyle Lowry, great rebounder for his position, a little bit older. Jared McCain in college and in high school, very good rebounder for his position. That stuff for Jared McCain, whenever he does take the floor, it may not translate because there are going to be much better players than we saw in the summer league that are out there on the floor. But they're like, dude, if you don't get out of here, not passing that Kyle Neubeck height test, you don't get out of here, you're not getting this rebound, buddy. Make sure you grab that board. And as far as the outlet and stuff,
we need to have like a height chart with Kyle Neubeck's like silhouette.
We should
in the background.
Yeah, I definitely fail
nobody,
it. But
nobody needs that.
But no, as far as the Brett Brown piece of, look, man, everybody knowing their job. Hey, when you get that rebound, you're the outlet. Be on the left or the right or the middle to start that thing. The other outlet maybe being the one you trust in Paul George. The other two, give the rock up and fill the lane and let's go. But first things first, secure that rebound. And look, if you can't run a fast break, if you can't get an early fast break going where you have the advantage numbers-wise, you know what? That's cool. It's not going to be there for you all the time. Just secure the board and then get back, because your 3 all-stars in a half-court set should definitely be enough to score on that other end, where it should no longer be a problem when we're talking about these rebounds.
I will say, I think it's pretty telling that we've gone 48 minutes now into the show, and we haven't really talked about anything offensively. Like, not a thing. It does in part because I think we're all pretty confident that this collection of talent will fit very well offensively, and that he should be able to find a way to make that work. I do think a lot of their concerns come down to, I don't even want to say defense, because I think they'll be a really good defensive team. But the little things, forcing turnovers, getting out on the break, being able to do that while still, controlling the glass. It's more that kind of stuff. And then also executing in high-pressure playoff situations, which a lot of the players on this roster have question marks about, or at least have not proven themselves while doing. But offensively, I do think it's telling that we've gone now almost 50 minutes with barely bringing it up.
I'm not worried about the offense too much. I mean, with those 3 all-stars and how they're going to run it, Nick Nurse's offense before Joel Embiid went down was very highly rated, which you guys talked about a lot before the injuries with Melton started to pile up, when Covington went down, even coming off the bench and helping out. Joel was fantastic. The offense was really good. That wasn't the problem. It's the defense that has to maintain and sustain that throughout the 82 games, plus, most importantly, the playoffs.
And I do think the offensive problems, if we are trying to predict any coming into the year, are related to those, roster management, rotation problems we were talking about up top. Because once Paul George signs for this team,
yes,
everybody else who joins up, unless you are getting just absolutely comically bad advice from the people around you, you're signing with this team knowing those are the 3 guys. That's who the offense runs through. And frankly, it should, right? Like, Tyrese Maxey just scored 26 points a game, made his first All-Star team. Joel Embiid, had he not gotten hurt last year, was on his way to winning his 3rd straight scoring title on great efficiency, was having the best point per minute season basically in NBA history. And that includes Wilt Chamberlain.
Which I don't even think it was basically. I think it was literally.
It's an insane thing to think about. So Paul George, if you simply put him in Tobias Harris's place, he is great in that exact role, but you can also give him the ball as a pick and roll ball handler. You can also, do some different things with him, ask him to create for himself a little bit for others, and he's up to the task of doing that. And so everybody else has to get into that, that mindset we're talking about with Kelly, that hard hat mentality. Like, tonight, I got to go check Jalen Brunson, and I got to crash the boards, and I have to be an active cutter off of Joel. And it's figuring out those little things. And so I'm not saying that Nick is going to be on autopilot offensively, because these guys do need to come in and get in that camp environment like the guys did last year. And like, okay, if Joel's operating at the nail, here's your timing on this, Joel. If the ball's with you for longer than, second and a half, 2 seconds, and nothing's happening, either got to make a move to the basket. And like, that's Nick Nurse's whole mentality offensively, is play quickly, move the ball, sort of similar to, it's the Popovich effect of how the NBA has unfolded over the last 15 years or so. It's a lot like those Spurs teams across the league now, right? Where free flowing, balls moving, nobody wants it to be that dribble the air out of the ball type of thing. The exception being last 5 minutes of a game. That's going to happen no matter what. So it's managing that balance between the half court structure where the ball flows, ball moves to, and everybody gets a touch, and then walking the game down in the final 5 minutes. So yeah, I think what we saw last year was the offensive structure and the tweaks that were made for more movement, more cutting, and less under Doc. It was that static look, right? And so Joel's reads were simpler. They were more consistent, but they were too predictable once they got into these high-level games in the playoffs, where he could get turned over 7 or 8 times because the other team, once they watch you on tape over and over again, see, okay, he's got the ball there. PJ Tucker will be here. James Harden will be there. Tyrese Maxey is here. Yep. And you can just time that over and over and over again. So I think what Nick's point of emphasis was, and will continue to be, is being unpredictable for the other team while having that baked in understanding for your guys.
And not taking a shot at all, mentioning Tobias Harris and people bringing him up. I mean, Paul George is just a better basketball player. It's going to make things easier when things do get a little stagnant and they do start to figure out some of these other things with the offense, that Paul George is going to find a way and maybe look a little bit better in trying to navigate through that offense and making it easier on the team. So.
No, and it was a great point Kyle made about how well scouted the league is. It's sort of like our show. Like right now, everyone who's watching has watched throughout the summer. They're here every day. They know about our great legs, but once games get started back, if we're still wearing shorts, they'll be surprised. That's the key of scouting.
You have to scout. It's the only way to make things work. Let's go to some of our super chats here, beginning with Devon, a.k.a. Schoolboy Beats. Devon says, first, biggest challenge is getting Joe to dress better.
Joe loves a head-to-toe sweatsuit, and I am certainly not going to poke any fun at him for that.
It is funny. We were up at his, when he won the MVP award up in Boston, and we were talking to some of our national colleagues. Won't mention him by name, but like, he's got to come out in a suit, right? And we're like, Kyle, there is no way he is wearing a suit today. He's coming out in sweatpants.
If I saw Joe in a suit, I would assume something went really wrong. Like there are very few scenarios outside of like a wedding or a funeral that I would predict Joel.
There was one night when he was out. He was on the bench in street clothes, and I don't know if it was the Anthony Melton or Robert Covington, and their outfits were so bad that at post game.
Let's be clear. You were Devon can make his own calls on this. Yeah. I will never poke fun at anybody's fashion on an NBA bench because their sweatshirt probably costs more than my entire wardrobe.
Derek tried to stay
out of this.
We were discussing it. You were at the arena, and we had some folks in the chat who agreed at that point. Whatever it was that night, we basically made a fun little side segment out of it because it was that bad of what not to do, what not to wear to the basketball game.
What's the opposite of drip cam?
That's a good question.
This sounded like the perfect
word's coming to my head
in,
that I don't think I'm allowed to say right now.
Can't say that one. So yeah, we'll see how things go. But quite honestly, the only thing I don't like, I love when he wears the sweats because that's just him. He's just being him. And the
If
Uggs,
I had his
just
money,
wear
that's
it.
how I would
He
dress.
wears the
So
Uggs.
more
Absolutely.
power to you.
Have at it. He comes in there. He's not nothing. He's all good. The only thing I don't like, and I still don't like, and I didn't like it in the past, especially with his foot injuries, were you can't
tie
wear,
your shoes.
Number one, tie your shoes. Number two, when you're on the road, and especially getting off the plane at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, stop wearing slides in 40-degree weather, 30-degree weather,
He
walking
swears
through
he's
snow.
me when I was a 19-year-old in college.
Stop
like,
it.
It's not that cold.
Stop
Meanwhile,
it.
my toes are like blue.
Stop it. Devon also has another one, says, jokes aside, a jump and passing from Kelly changes the complexion of this team. Definitely can help if he's a more willing passer and connective passer.
Yeah, but Joe would lose 50 pounds, and we can talk about all kinds of things that will never happen.
It might be too late.
Kelly is 28. He's kind of is who he is.
Down the stretch, he did have some games, especially without Joel, where we had to sit here on this show and be like, that's not the Kelly that I've seen.
He can sustain that. I will give him all the praise in the world, because I think that's one of his, if not the biggest, even more than the shot. I think the passing and decision-making is his biggest weakness.
Yeah.
But I will believe it when I see it.
Staying on Kelly conversation, Ernest with another $5 donation super chat. Thank you, Ernest Peterson. The assumption is Kelly starts. Is there a world where someone else starts and he's a sixth man? If so, then who?
So
We've talked about
agree
this.
with his assumption, and I think we've all expressed that on this show. But I've said this before. They have three no doubt about it starters and three players who can start in the right situation. And the sixth one there is Eric Gordon. And Gordon specifically, if you want to get a little bit more shooting, maybe a little bit more ball handling, you could see him coming in. Certainly he's not coming in for Paul George. I don't think he's coming in for Caleb Martin just because Caleb Martin's a better shooter and a more reliable shooter than Kelly. If that change ends up happening, I think Kelly would be the likely candidate. So I agree with your both assumption that Kelly starts, but I don't think it's impossible that Eric Gordon could start as well.
I planted my flag earlier this offseason on I think Eric Gordon could start Island, and I'm building a nice hotel there for anyone who wants to come stay, because I've heard some more things throughout, just some little whispers throughout the offseason about Eric Gordon's importance to the team that I would say have moved me further onto that island. But yeah, I think it's so, as we've said all offseason, this would be less about what Kelly doesn't deserve to start and more about balancing the lineup and Kelly's ability to be a more dynamic talent and threat off the bench, right? Like, I think Eric Gordon or one of these other guys, if it were to be like a Lowry or someone like that, they can be the fine enough player off the bench, but at their respective ages and with their skill sets, it's not that when you think of sixth man, you think of someone who is like a starter level player who, when they come in, it's like, oh damn, like we just got hit with the counter punch, right? Like the starters came out and it's, oh, we think we're getting a break, and then hey, there's Lou Williams, got to deal with him for the next 10, 12, 14 minutes, whatever it is. And I think Kelly is more suited to be that type of guy than anyone else who would be a candidate to come off the bench. Now, I think ultimately he is going to start, and that's how this is going to work. But again, I think it's a credit to Kelly that we think he's going to start, but also if someone were to be asked to do this, to move to the bench, to be in that role, that I think, and we all think, that he's the most capable guy in that type of situation. It speaks to the energy and the skill set, all the things that he brings to the table.
And since everything has really been revolving around Nick Nurse here on the show, I wonder how much some of that might factor into opponent that they play on any given night, when it's like, you know what? Tonight calls for Kyle Lowry. Tonight calls for Eric Gordon in this particular spot. Yabusele maybe instead of Kelly. Not demoting
or just
you
to manage guys' minutes too, right? Like maybe Kelly gets to a point where, man, he's playing too much at a certain point in the season.
Dial it back a little bit.
And we'll save you a few minutes tonight. Now, I don't think with him you probably have to do that. Yeah. But just for the sake of argument, I think that's another way to get to the same place.
Make sure you all sign up for the Die Hard program that Derek talked about a little bit earlier. You can get Derek's hat at the Philly Locker, the store. my T-shirt that we have right here. Kyle always has some PHLY
nothing for
gear
me today.
on overall. So make sure you go sign up to become a diehard member. Take advantage of some of the perks that we have, the stories that are going to be coming for training camp, media day, training camp, preseason, and then the start of the regular season from Derek and Kyle. Again, with the Flyers and Michkov, the mania is happening, and Charlie is all over it. The Birds are getting ready for week number 3. Some concerns there going against New Orleans. Will A.J. Brown play? Well, Fran, Bo, and Zach, and Les Bowen, they all have you covered. Jim Salisbury.
In addition to Fran being on leg watch.
He's on leg watch.
Popped
He's on leg
into
watch.
the chat to say hello.
Just doing a little scouting.
And Jim Salisbury has you covered as the Phils are trying to lock down the division and number 1 overall in the National League for the postseason, winning the pennant.
Go
great.
Phils, baby. Baseball season's about to start. Can't wait.
You hear this, Derek?
Number 1 Phils fan on the set. I'm
Sounds
ready.
very disingenuous.
Speaking of leg day, Devon, back. Kyle, you definitely squat more than Jalen Hurts, bro.
If I tried to squat as much as Jalen Hurts, my body would disintegrate. I think my organs would just squish. My bones would break. So no. It's deceptive because we sit here and I sit with my legs against the chair. So it just makes my legs look much bigger than they actually are.
Oh, man, the jokes are fantastic when it comes to Kyle.
Always the leg jokes in here.
Martian Die Hard program comes with Kyle leg workouts. There you go.
Long time ago, I had plenty of leg strength, but those my athletic days behind me. Just like, I don't remember who it is that accused me of being a liar that I could dunk when I was younger. But
yeah, that was a funny one. Yeah,
no trust from the PHLY Sixers audience, man.
None at all. Final super chat here on this Thursday. Keyshawn Washington. If the league was to expand next year, which 8 players would you protect in an expansion draft on the Sixers team?
Okay, so we're saying next year, right? Because I think if it was
25
right now, I might give you a different answer than once we finish the season and it's because let's say Paul George just completely completely falls off a cliff this year. Then it's like, well, if you want to take the guy, but no, I think even in that case, you just hope for a rebound. Okay.
Well, I think in that case, you might make the argument that you don't protect him because a new team isn't going to want that big of a contract for a 35, 36-year-old.
Okay. So
8 players.
The obvious one was the first 3 are Joe, Tyrese, Paul. After that, probably Kelly.
4.
Jared McCain, because he's the long-term guy.
5.
Ricky.
I was going to say, if you don't get to Rick eventually.
Go get him, Rick. Not you,
words.
expansion team. You can't have him. That's 6.
And who's the last 2?
7 and 8. Wow.
Oh, Caleb, I think, is it because he's prime age. He's on a good contract. Like, I think Caleb's the other easy one. I probably should have said him earlier, honestly. So who would be the last one? We were all in agreement on the first 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're absolute 7s.
Probably
It might be Bona, yeah.
Yeah. Bona or Drummond.
I think you could leave him unprotected and he would potentially
survive.
go unclaimed.
He would survive.
I mean, what? Are you worried about them claiming Drummond?
I would because he's a starting caliber.
Yeah,
starting caliber.
Drummond
center.
is a very good role player who I think an expansion team would be like, yeah, we'll take.
He can
him
be our starting 5.
So
yeah,
I think you could roll the dice on Bona. I think I would probably protect. Yeah, I think it's Drummond unless Yabusele were to come out this season and play, but I don't even know that would matter because probably have to re-sign him and whatnot anyway.
So yeah. Drummond and Martin are the last 2. Yeah, Drummond and Martin, last 2.
Not the last 2 because I do think Caleb would be higher on that list.
I think Caleb first because I neglected him, but that's a playable wing on a really affordable contract
in this league. Yes.
Worth its weight in gold.
Absolutely. All right. There you have it. Hope we answered that question. We agreed with you there.
Let's go back to next summer, and we'll have that conversation again, and we'll see how mad we are.
Bookmark that one, Bree. All right, let's get to the world famous roll call on this Thursday. Roll call time.
Hello,
Let's get
and
after
thank
it.
you to everybody in here, even those who are making ridiculous jokes about my legs.
We're used to it now.
We know that Martian Lynch, the number one trash talker and joke maker in the chat, had plenty to say, such as Kyle rocked the baby before Dr. J. That certainly didn't happen, but shout out
What up,
to the
Martian?
only doctor in Philadelphia, Julius Irving. Thank you to Ernest Peterson, to Rick Morse, to Malcolm Carrington, who said Kyle wears strength systems to play Pop-A-Shot. I'm so glad you brought up Pop-A-Shot, Malcolm, because yesterday the bar was raised yet again.
Oh,
138 on that Pop-A-Shot machine. And also, Bree set a new high score of her own
Yes.
Also,
after
just
not
to
much playing of Pop-A-Shot.
Put it into context. That's 138 in 55 seconds.
Mhm.
That's correct.
Yep. What up, Malk?
What up, Mal? What's up to Danny in here again today? What's up to Danny?
What up, Danny Green?
Prophet One in the building. Jay in the building.
What up, Jay?
Darkness
Whoa, turn the lights down.
in the building. What's up to Bootzilla?
Boots. Late
What's
in the
up
game,
to my
but
guy
made
Al,
it.
the 2-minute warning?
What up, Al?
What's up to my girl Winona?
Hey, Nona. She wants to Uber
Who
with
says,
us in the
can
Bahamas.
I get in the Uber with y'all in the Bahamas?
Absolutely,
Winona, if you
Nona.
are
If
there
you're
in the Bahamas,
you better stop by. And
we
say
will
hi.
be at the
Yes.
craps table at Atlantis. You and me, Winona. That's my solemn vow to you. Hello to Valhos. I
Hey,
hope
Val.
you are enjoying that giant Brian Dawkins
Yes.
giveaway
Oh,
that
Val.
you got the other night.
Fantastic.
Brian Knight, what up to you? What's up to Aaron?
What up, Aaron?
What's up to everybody? Scott G, who said big day for Ernest references. Yeah, I think Martian Lynch at some point said, I have the swag of the Ernest movies. Yeah, it's more like Ernest goes to J. Crew, but yeah, that's I guess that'd be the title of that movie.
Who are the most famous Ernest?
Smy Guy.
What up, Smile Guy?
You better love
I don't know.
somebody.
I can't-
Love
Eugene
somebody,
Ross.
love somebody, love somebody.
How can I forget Eugene?
Ernest Hemingway.
Oh yeah.
And
that's a
who
good
are our
call.
super
That's a good
chatters
call.
today? Bree, we had
We had
Devon,
we had
aka
Ern.
Schoolboy Beats. Ernest was in here. We had Keyshawn Washington.
Yep.
Thank you to all of you wonderful people for stopping through and sending us some love. And one last one.
Ernest Givens.
Two last ones.
Football player. Houston.
Lauren
Oilers.
Michaels from SNL.
Hey, Lauren, you're back in season, man. We're ready, baby. We're ready.
Speaking, hey, Lauren, I'm never going to hear the end of it from my wife that Chappelle Roan is on SNL as a musical guest. I hear enough of her music as it is. You're in hot water with me.
Hey, come on, Lauren.
And thank you from the PHLY Eagle Show. Thank you to Fran Duffy stopping through.
What up, Fran?
Very briefly today, if Fran is still here. Thanks, everyone. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you get notifications.
That was a good
each
one. Good
and
day.
every time we go live. If you hit the thumbs up button, there'll be another leg day on the show tomorrow. Thank you to super producer
Weather
Bree.
cooperates.
We'll be
Leg day.
back 3 p.m. on Friday. Goodbye.
See ya.
We all silly like the mayor.